Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to UK Column. I'm Liz Evans, and I'm delighted to be interviewing Joy Warren from the Fluoride Free Alliance UK to discuss the very important issue of water fluoridation, a serious health and ethical issue. So Joy has a degree in environmental science and has been campaigning against water fluoridation for over 20 years, including advising and helping my organisation, the UK Medical Freedom Alliance, in a campaign we ran last year, opposing a proposal to add fluoride to water in a large area of northeast England. So thank you so much for joining us, Joy. I just wonder if we could start with you telling us a little bit about your background and how you became involved in campaigning against water fluoridation.
Oh, good morning, Liz. Thanks for asking me to come onto the programme. About 22 years ago, I learned about fluoridation at a Friends of the Earth meeting. The lady who was telling us about it was a medical doctor, and she had been made ill by drinking fluoridated water in Coventry, having previously lived in London. The illness, unknown to her for about 2 years, was hypothyroidism. Clearly, she was not taking her kelp or taking iodide, and she was drinking fluoridated tap water and fluoridated food manufactured in the West Midlands. So I took it away for about a year, and I thought, the government couldn't be doing this to us, surely. But they were. And I found so much information that I really became so convinced that fluoridation of our drinking water was a thoroughly bad thing, not just because it was medically unorthodox, but because it was giving us compulsory medicine. But at the time, the definition of medicine hadn't been kind of worked out through the system, but I now know it is definitely medicine, and therefore it's definitely unethical.
And you have a degree in environmental science. Was it covered at all in that? I mean, did that help you in your sort of understanding and alarm as you learned more about fluoride?
No, it wasn't covered in the degree course. Not even fluoride going into the rivers following treatment in the sewage works. Although we did look at sewage treatment, which helps a lot for me to understand what's going on. I think possibly the degree course helped me to work things out properly, logically, as opposed to getting emotional about it.
Mm. And I mean, many of us, hearing your story might be starting to raise alarm bells thinking, I don't even know if I'm in a fluoridated area. So how much of the UK is affected by having fluoride in their water, and how would someone find out whether their area is affected?
All right, so 6 million people living in England are fluoridated deliberately. Another 300,000 are getting water which has got natural fluoride in it, and that comes from the bedrock. It's mainly in the east coast of England that you'll find natural fluoride. For deliberate fluoride, it's most of the West Midlands and Warwickshire, and most of the northeast. Part of it is threatened now, as opposed to being fluoridated at the moment. And there are pockets of other places like West Cumbria and Cheshire and Bedfordshire, which have got it as well. And that's because I think something to do with industry and the prevailing winds. And the people living northeast of the prevailing winds are possibly being fluoridated because of the industry not wanting to worry about their pollutants coming out of their stacks. It's a kind of like a cloak and dagger thing, really. And this happened back in 1985 when Margaret Thatcher legalised fluoridation. And she started off, I believe, then worrying about Consett and Stanley and Northumberland, where there was a large population of coal miners. She was a chemist. She knew all about fluoride. So she knew how it affected the body and how it silts up the pineal gland. So why wouldn't she want to sort of keep the population quiet? Because that's what's happening, because they used it in the gulags in Russia to keep the prisoners quiet. So that's probably what's happening for most people who don't even know they're fluoridated. and didn't know why it would be dangerous for them to have it in their water every day of their lives while living in a fluoridated area.
So, from an informed consent perspective, I'm thinking, is it not written? Is it written on people's water bills? You are in a fluoridated area and you are being medicated. It just feels like this is something that's going on under the radar, and people aren't even being informed so that they know what's in their water. Is that kind of how you found it in the different water regions?
I think anybody moving into a fluoridated area would not think to ask about the water supply when you move into a new house. It's only later, perhaps, it might percolate through to you. A few years back, we persuaded Severn Trent to add a clause in the back of their water bill saying that your water is fluoridated. That lasted for about 3 years, and then it disappeared. I don't think it's on any water bills, but definitely is if you go into a water company's website and ask to see the water quality report for your postcode, you will then see there's a statement above the details which says that fluoride is added to your water at the behest of the health authorities. And that's only then you will realize that you are fluoridated. If you then go into the detailed report, you will see that the level of fluoride is slightly higher than natural fluoride in some cases. So you'd have levels of, say, 0.7, 0.8, minimum, average, and maximum. But natural fluoride is constant. So if you were living in, say, outside Bath, you'd find something like 0.2 minimum, 0.2 average, 0.2 maximum. So that's constant. The deliberate fluoride fluctuates throughout the year. So you just don't know. You have to look it up. You just have to know to look it up before you find out, basically.
Right. So it requires an active forensic effort from a consumer to even find out what they have to look into these reports. And I'm curious about, is natural fluoride less hazardous to human health than the added fluoride?
At the levels encountered in England, it is less injurious. It's calcium fluoride and also magnesium fluoride. But in a couple of areas on the northeast coast, like Hartlepool, Peterlee, Easington, the levels are 1 milligram and more, because these areas lie over the magnesium shales, and the magnesium has fluoride in it. So the natural fluoride, for example, in Hartlepool is 1.9 milligrams of fluoride, but because that's over the 1.5 maximum World Health Organization level, it has to be brought down by diluting it with water from outside the area, which does not have fluoride in it. But they can't bring too much water in from outside because that would deplete the groundwater of the water outside the area. So they bring it down to 1.3. So anybody living in Hartlepool is really very much overexposed, especially the unborn child and the infant being given baby formula made up with fluoridated tap water, or not in this case, with fluoride tap water.
Yeah. And presumably it would not be beyond the industry to actually get rid of the natural fluoride in the water. They must have filtration systems or osmosis, reverse osmosis systems that could do that, but they choose not to. They just dilute it down to the sort of the highest threshold they can get away with.
That's for sure. Well, I think possibly using reverse osmosis for water treatment works would be completely unrealistic. You just can't do it. That wouldn't work at all. The only way you can bring down the natural fluoride is to bring in non-fluoride water from outside the region. Because if you're in the middle of West Midlands, that would be very difficult if we had natural fluoride in our water, which we don't. We just have artificial fluoride. For example, now let's see, we might use the example of Hartlepool, where they bring in water to bring it down by 0.6. So you now have 1.3. It's really bad news. Why should those people have to put up with that? Because that's health damaging over the decades. And obviously it's going to really harm the unborn child and the infant anyway. It is really difficult. I mean, they just can't filter it out. And when you do water treatment, it goes through aluminium sulfate, which lovely word this is, flocculates off all the nasties and catches all them into sort of white flocks, which float on top of the water as it's flowing through the water treatment works. So the purified water goes out the bottom of the tank and then proceeds through the water treatment process. That's the only way they can do it. But, they can't remove all the natural fluoride. If they could, using that sort of water treatment system, then we would not have any natural fluoride in our drinking water. And we do.
So then moving on to the artificially fluoridated water, I understand that contrary to what we're led to believe, it isn't the mineral fluoride that's added to the water. It's some very toxic fluoride compound. I think is it hexafluorosilicic acid?
Well done.
So can you tell us a bit more about hexafluorosilicic acid and how it ended up, or when did it start being put in our drinking water, and what's the story behind this compound?
Let me tell you about the compound first of all. The chemical formula is H2SiF6. That's hydrogen, 2 atoms, silica, 1 atom, fluoride, 6 atoms. Now, it's an hexa because of the 6 atoms in the fluoride is 6 atoms, right? So that's hexa, but it's a misnomer. It's intended to deceive in a way because it should be hydrofluorosilicic acid, which would be a more accurate description. But once you say there was hydrogen in the mix and there's fluoride in the mix, some people might get a bit sort of suspicious because you've then got something which could be hydrofluoric acid, which is a deadly combination, but the silica is getting in the way at the moment, so it's not a problem. But once it gets into the stomach, the hydrofluoric acid does actually worm its way through the stomach wall and then sets up irritation in the stomach lining. Now, could this be the colic which babies experience in a fluoridated area? I have no idea. If we could actually do a comparison, could map colic against fluoridated, non-fluoridated areas, we might find something interesting. But I don't think anybody's going to do that for us. H2SiF6 is an industrial hazardous waste. There's no getting away from it. The industry that produces it should neutralize it and make it less dangerous, perhaps turn it into sodium fluoride and then sequester it somewhere underground, because by this time it'll be crystal. And if they keep it dry, it should be okay. But it costs money to neutralize, but they get a little bit of money from governments like ours to bring it into the country and put it into our drinking water. Now, I can't understand why anybody would want to put a hazardous waste in our drinking water, but it's diluted. It's so heavily diluted, you're told, don't worry, it won't hurt you. And also everything in that acid is below maximum levels, but are allowable. However, that's just the concentration of the contaminants and the chemicals in the acid. They're not looking at the dose. Now, it's the dose per day and the dose per lifetime, which are the dangerous things. Now, the dose per day should not exceed more than 6 milligrams of fluoride per day. But people who drink lots of tap water, which has got fluoride added, and if they drink tea made up with fluoridated tap water, and if they drink more than 6 mugs of tea a day, we're now talking about going over 6 milligrams a day. And I've heard of people drinking 10 mugs of tea a day made with fluoridated tap water, and that's no good for their health going forward. Also, we've got lots of chemicals in the acid, which are in the rock, which is ground down to make phosphate fertilizer. And these contaminants either stay in the phosphate fertilizer or they go into the hazardous waste. And these contaminants are heavy metals such as antimony, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury, nickel, and beneficial selenium, fortunately. This is how we get our selenium, I suspect, in our diet. But it's bad news. And also we've got this hydrofluoric acid, which is in the acid itself, which is free. So it actually can gas off as hydrogen fluoride gas. And that gas, I believe, is what did for the residents of Herculaneum and Pompeii, when Vesuvius blew back in the, what is it? I can't remember the date. So we say 2,000 years ago. um, and then you've got the water, which stops the particulates and hot gases going out the chimney at the phosphate fertilizer manufactory. And that water is not pure. It's been hanging around. It's been contaminated. So there are lots of nasty things in there as well. And on top about 28 different contaminants in the hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is not good for our health going forward. Every day of our life, we'll be drinking these. They're in minute proportions, but you really shouldn't have arsenic in your drinking water. And I think the main reason for having water treatment, I may be wrong here, but it's to take out all the nasties so we have nice potable water coming out of our tap. But how can you have potable water when all the nasties, or most of them, have been removed, and then the water company adds them back? And that is the real scandal of fluoridation. They try to tell us, oh, it's okay because everything is below the maximum allowable. But it may well be, but we're looking at daily exposure, lifetime exposure, and lots of these heavy metals are bioaccumulative. Yeah. Real scandal.
That is extremely concerning. So whose bright idea was it to add this to drinking water? When did it first happen in the UK? And were we the country that started it, or had this already happened elsewhere?
Yes, it started around in the United States. It was because the Aluminium Company of America couldn't get rid of its waste at a small cost, so they decided to dump it, but they couldn't dump it because the law said they couldn't do that. So somebody had a bright idea that would be put in drinking water and drip fed into the drinking water, and therefore drip fed into people, but most of it isn't drunk. And that's why most of it goes into the sewers. And then it goes into the rivers, the estuaries, and into the sea. And that's where it can't be dumped in the first place. But this time it's being drip fed. It's very dilute. So yeah, why not, hey? The sea can take it. The sea is more able to put up with levels of fluoride that the rivers can't. And of course, in the rivers, the freshwater life is now suffering that badly. Because in England, it goes into our sewers and half of it goes into our rivers when it's been treated. Right, so 1948, 49, they started a 10-year trial to see what would happen to the dentition of children. And they said, oh, yeah, it's working, it's wonderful. But they forgot to tell us about the reduction in dental decay in the non-fluoridated control group. It was very, very, very bad. There was so orchestrated. Then in the UK, the government had a bright idea to send some dentists across to America to find out what was happening. And the dentists came back to the UK and said, hey, it's brilliant stuff. This is really stopping dental decay. And we've got a huge amount of dental decay in our children. So let's do it. So they started a trial, 4 trials in 1955 in 4 areas of Great Britain. And that was in Scotland, Anglesey in Wales, Watford, and in Andover. The people in Andover chucked it out after about 3 years because the local authority changed hands. And the people who got in power said, we're in power now, we don't want it, so stop putting it in our drinking water. And because they owned the water board at the time, Andover's Borough Council could do that. So that was good. And then in Scotland, the area which was fluoridated chucked it out after about 10 years. Watford had already chucked it out. And the only area which continued to be fluoridated under the trial was Anglesey. And they finished in 1991 because Welsh Water decided they didn't want to do it anymore. Basically that. They just told the government, get lost. And those 4 trials finished then finally in 1991. But in the meantime, Birmingham received a grant of money from America to start fluoridating the West Midlands. And I believe at the time, the dental decay was really bad because they'd brought in very, very soft water from Wales, which didn't have any good minerals in it. And the dental decay had increased. So they had to do something. And they did it without asking anyone's permission. There was no public consultation whatsoever. at 64, and then progressively between 64 and 87, the rest of the fluoridated areas were fluoridated. I don't know the last one to be fluoridated, but as I say, I don't really think it was all about dental decay. It could well have been pressure from heavy industry not wanting to get a bad reputation for polluting areas to the northeast of their manufacturing plants.
I mean, I'm thinking about this from an ethical perspective as well, because obviously what this constitutes is a public health measure to add fluoride to drinking water to reduce dental decay. But this is a one-size-fits-all forced mass medication of the UK public. The people in fluoridated areas, there is no, individual risk-benefit analysis for this medication. And of course, drinking water is the most basic thing of life. We cannot survive without water. And if you don't have a lot of money, you can't be buying water. So it comes out of your tap. So this is an extremely unethical way to administer a public health measure, I would say. And as you say, you've got significant chronic and cumulative risks because this isn't just a one-off exposure. This is all day, every day, for every day of your life. And fluoride must, if you're having it as a medical intervention, it will have risks as well as benefits. I'm sure they will acknowledge that there are risks as well as benefits. So what is the evidence that water fluoridation will benefit dental health? And then on the flip side, what are the known risks and harms? So, what is this risk-benefit analysis?
Right, so the benefit is apparently fluoridated 5-year-olds have 3% less dental decay than non-fluoridated children. Those figures come from 2 very recent research reports, which were paid for by the UK government. So the UK government surely knows the results. 3% means diddly squat, basically. It's perhaps 1 filling per mouth. And it's really a lot of money to spend fluoridating our entire population just to prevent 1 filling, as it were, or... Do they fill baby teeth? They probably do these days. So the benefit is tiny. The researchers said that it was a modest improvement in dental hygiene. The risks are, the ones we are quoting at the moment, because they seem to be so obvious, hypothyroidism, where if a woman has, in the main, has a deficit of iodide and too much fluoride in her body, her thyroid gland is poisoned. And there are almost 50% more people with hypothyroidism in a fluoridated area of England compared to a non-fluoridated area. And the places quoted are Greater Birmingham versus Greater Manchester. Manchester is not fluoridated. It's almost double the amount of hypothyroidism amongst mainly elderly women in those areas in the West Midlands. The other one we believe is, we've seen a lot of research, and there is a review on ResearchGate into this, and that's diabetes 2, because fluoride is an enzyme destroyer, and lots of processes go on in the endocrine system, and the pancreas is clearly likely to be damaged by the bioaccumulation of fluoride in the organs. Then we've got fractured hips. Now, because fluoride is supposed to accumulate in teeth to stop decay, which it doesn't really when you think about it, how can it? Then it goes into the bones, and the bones accumulate it, and that has an effect of densifying the bone material, but also stopping the production of collagen, bone collagen. And that causes brittle bones over the decades. So when you're standing at the kitchen sink and you're a lady of about 65, 70, and you have a spontaneous break of your thigh bone, and then you fall to the floor. People used to think it was falling which caused the breakage, but we think now, perhaps in a lot of cases, it's the breakage of the bone before the fall occurs. So that's a really bad thing because, again, recent research report from Scandinavia in 1921, April 21, found that there was 50% more fractured neck of femur in fluoridated women compared to non-fluoridated women. But I have to say here, in this particular part of Scandinavia, it's natural fluoride. So yes, calcium fluoride can be okay, but in this particular case, it really made the bones weak. So the correlation is really strong in this particular case. In 2022, a year later, we find that the Department of Health, in their 4-yearly monitoring report on the health effects of fluoride, forgot to include the 2021 Scandinavian report, which was rather good, wasn't it? They included other things on fractured neck of femur, but not the Scandinavian one. So that really, well, I didn't believe in these reports anyway, but that really put the cherry on the top of the cake, basically, for me. They just don't want to admit that there's any harm in fluoridation. And finally, the most important thing that we're concerned about now is because fluoride in the womb and in the infants causes a significant reduction in IQ. And that's because when the woman is pregnant, she may be drinking fluoridated tap water. She may be drinking lots of tea because she shouldn't be drinking alcohol. Well, she shouldn't really be drinking tea either because that's really bad. And the fetus is overexposed to fluoride, which affects the developing endocrine system. And it also gets into the brain because in the fetus, there is no blood-brain barrier. Now, this causes permanent brain damage. Not that you'd notice. The child will be less intelligent, but not noticeably so to in the eyes of the parents. But unfortunately, this actually shifts the intelligence of a whole population down. So your geniuses will now be highly intelligent, and your average intelligent children will be not so intelligent, and the not so intelligent will be special needs. And the special needs would be probably completely non-educationable because there's just no way that they can ever be shown how to improve their brain health and their intelligence. So this is a really bad thing. We've had an American judgment in September last year. After 7 years court trial, the judge ruled that fluoride poses an unreasonable risk to the IQ of children. That is a really very strong decision. He told the Environmental Protection Agency to basically up their game, try to stop the overexposure to the population to fluoride, because obviously you don't want your population to be unintelligent. That would be a recipe for disaster. So those are the 3 or 4 real reasons why we think it's really bad for health. And of course, the ethics is out of this world. It's really bad news. You cannot give someone who has got mental capacity compulsory medicine. And it's coming out of your tap, and you can't afford to buy unfluoridated water in bottles, or you can't afford to filter it. It's compulsory because you have to have water to keep yourself hydrated, to keep away all the nasty diseases you can have from being dehydrated. So it's really bad news. I could quote you all the law on this if you wanted me to, but I've gone on for some time, I think.
That was really, really interesting. And I mean, it just shows what a catastrophic policy this is. The figures are astounding about the increased rates of the hypothyroidism and the fractured neck of femurs. We're not just talking about 1% more, we're talking about 50% more. And thinking about what that means for public health, because these are life-limiting, life-ending conditions. They will knock years and years off people's health. Then, of course, the additional exposure to the fetus and the developing brain and the impact that that's now being sort of proven in court to have is really, really sobering, very sobering. So in your sort of research through the government sort of data, have they actually ever produced a study which shows evidence for long-term safety for this? Because it's all very well to say, oh yes, we've shown that this reduces dental decay, but where is there research that says we have studied people for 30 years who are taking this much a day, and we're comparing them to a control group who were in a completely unfluoridated area for 30 years, and these are the health outcomes? Have they ever done this? Because it feels like the onus should be on the government to prove long-term safety before they start basically treating us as guinea pigs.
Correct. They have never done a risk analysis research into the issue. And when we do freedom of information requests to the Department of Health and ask them to provide the information, the research information, which proves their mantra of safe and effective, they say the Department of Health does not hold the information. That's a get out, isn't it? They don't know, they don't have it.
That seems to be the mantra for everything toxic that they want to give to you. It's the marketing slogan. So again, has that been kind of used in fluoride, that it's safe and effective?
Oh, yes, all the time. Of course it is, yes. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing it, would they? Yeah, safe and effective every other week, I'd say.
Wow. So where are dentists in all this? Because obviously they play a massive part in not just pushing water fluoridation, but also giving people individually fluoride-containing products, painting fluoride on people's teeth, fluoride mouthwashes, toothpastes. And I remember when I was a child taking fluoride tablets, because that was all the rage. Your child would take their fluoride tablet every day. What teaching do they get on fluoride toxicity, and how willing are they to engage with your information and your campaigning?
Right. So the American Dental Association is completely in favor of fluoridation. I have no idea why. Perhaps they get more patients later on in their lives with damaged teeth from the fluoride. That has transferred across the pond to the British Dental Association. And the British Dental Association are in cahoots with the British Fluoridation Society. The dental schools teach that fluoride is good for dental health, and they haven't changed. I suspect they haven't actually had their textbooks updated for several decades. So the dentists come out of dental school believing in fluoridation and fluoride, and of course they are now encouraged to paint the teeth of young patients with fluoride varnish, whether or not the parent wants it or not. I mean, okay, if the parent turns her back while the dentist gets the brush out, and she sees that the dentist is just about to brush the teeth with fluoride, she can say, no, stop. And she has the right to do that. Of course, the dentist won't like that because he's already opened the bottle and probably wasted his brush, whatever they use. Presumably it is a small brush. The dentists coming out of mainstream dental colleges believe in fluoridation, and the BDA encourages this belief.
It's an ideological position, isn't it? Very similar to doctors believing in vaccination. It feels like that fluoridation is the sacred cow of dentistry. And I would just like to back up what you said about when they're trying to paint children's teeth. That actually happened to me with one of my children. I'd just taken them to a routine appointment, and then suddenly the dentist goes, "Oh, I'm just going to put this fluoride on your teeth." And I literally went, "Stop, do not do it." And then we had this big argument. And I was just like, no, I don't want you to do it. And, well, why not? And And I just said, no, I don't consent. Anyway, we got out without my daughter being painted. But I was so shocked that A, I hadn't been asked. It was just presented as a fait accompli. And B, that when I said, I don't want this, that this was such an emotive issue. So we actually switched dentists as a result. But yeah, so I have firsthand experience of that. And it is, so you're really up against a profession which has an deep-seated ideological belief which cannot be questioned. What are your tactics in terms of the campaigners in trying to sort of break down this ignorance?
We have great difficulty getting through to anybody, as well as in the case of vaccinations. Do not doctors and dentists get paid to use a certain type of treatment. So your emotive dentist was probably thinking, oh, I've just lost 6 or 7 pounds because this woman is being so absolutely stubborn about this. And also, I mean, I don't ever have any vaccinations. I must be losing my doctor an awful lot of money because I get 3 or 4 reminders each year to go and get a vaccination for shingles and flu and COVID and boosters and things like that. I just don't go. But they are so keen because they make money from pushing these particular treatments or prophylactics, if you like. Okay, I have failed. My organization's failed to engage with the dentists. The only dentists that we can talk to are holistic dentists, or the ones who don't belong to the BDA, and they are in the minority. How do you battle something like this? I used to put comments on the British Dental Journal comments box on certain things until they stopped putting the comments box on because of people like me being against what they are pushing, as it were. No, it's really difficult to break in. And how do you get a course book changed when the policy is still strong there? And why are they not listening? Why are the dentists not listening in the BDA? Why do they not want to see the truth? Is it because they've been wrong all this time and they don't want to admit it? And that probably is more likely the case.
It's a serious responsibility to prescribe any medication to an individual. And if you think about how lax they are around the dosage of fluoride, because, you know, if you're giving, I know sometimes they'll say you need high fluoride toothpaste. So this isn't just your normal toothpaste from the supermarket, but you're getting, you know, really high levels in specialized toothpaste, plus mouthwashes, plus this painting, and then plus you don't know how much people are drinking. I mean, people could be getting astronomical levels of fluoride that could cause some very serious, quite quick acute health problems. You know, if you think about the range of dosage across the country, where some people are probably getting away with having hardly any fluoride and some people are getting thousands of times higher.
We could probably say it's also in their pharmaceutical drugs, because I believe fluoride is a potentiator to get the active substance into the cells. Now, once fluoride gets into your cell, it heads for the mitochondria, where it will interfere with the electron chain transfer mechanism for creating ADP from ATP. So your energy is going to be reducing gradually over the decades. I am amazed how much, for example, in Hartlepool, where they have 1.3 milligrams per litre, they don't even look at reducing pharmaceutical good doses. They don't tell anybody, you know, keep away from A, B, and C because that'll increase your fluoride load. And of course, at 1.3, the fluoride load in Hartlepool is even higher because of everything they're eating or drinking, apart from the brewery, which in Hartlepool, which makes very nice beer. I've been there. We had a tour and we asked the question and they showed us their reverse osmosis filters. And they use natural magnesium fluoride water from the ground. So they don't have any water charges, but they take all the minerals out using these reverse osmosis filters. So the beer is very pure. It's strange to believe that that's happening. And they know about it, of course, in Hartlepool when they're brewing their beer. And the beer in Hartlepool is sold around the country. So there you go. So, yeah, the doses are, it's just ridiculous. And also, I realize that it actually is absorbed through the skin when you have a hot bath. And that's going to damage the endocrine system in the skin because the keratinocytes have got an endocrine function. Another reason why I think older ladies in fluoridated areas come down with hypothyroidism far more easily because a lot of ladies love having a hot baths and don't realize that they are actually swimming in poison. And that is what it is. If it reduces a child's IQ, it's known as a developmental neurotoxin. And if it's not exactly developmental for an adult, it's still a neurotoxin and a toxin. So you just don't want it anywhere near your body because it really, really damages the whole body systems. The dose is definitely uncontrolled, definitely.
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a lot of our listeners who are going to be quite concerned, especially if they're in a fluoridated area. So what can people do to actually reduce their exposure if they are cursed with this additional fluoride being put into their water? What steps have people been taking which might help?
It's a bit of a discipline, and you just have to realize that it's not going to be too much of a discipline after a few weeks. First of all, in my house, and we're fluoridated, we have reverse osmosis, but when I can't be bothered to change the filters, I stick the filtered water into a distiller. So we then get 4 liters of pure water after 4 hours. Then you have to wait for it to cool down, stick it into the receptacle you're going to be drinking it out of. Our distiller has got a stainless steel body internally and externally, and also we have a glass receptacle to receive the filtered water. Unfortunately, we don't go for glass demijohns, so we do drink out of plastic bottles. That's why we wait for it to cool down. Right, so you can also use water filtered jugs, but they're not very good, and you have to be really careful and make sure that there are accredited laboratory analyses for the filtered water from each product you're looking at on the internet. First of all, Brita, BRITA, has never claimed that their product reduces or removes fluoride. So I find it unconscionable that they have promotions in supermarkets in fluoridated areas, reduced price, because that's so bad, because the filter's taking out the good stuff and leaving behind the bad stuff. There are some other water filter jugs on the market which I wouldn't touch until I've done a thorough analysis. And you have to be very careful here, because you have to do it when the filter's new, when it's half used and 3/4 used and completely depleted, to make sure that the claims were accurate. But the one thing I would say about Zero water filter, it does work, although I had my doubts to begin with. But I did actually analyze it, and it did work, and it does work. There's filter jugs. So that's reverse osmosis, which is really good. Again, you have to change the filters and the membranes half at 6 months and at a year. So the filters every 6 months and the membrane every year, in order to keep the efficiency of the filter. Other ones, bone char, highly concentrated, compressed bone char filters do work to remove fluoride, but it's not much good if you're of a religious persuasion, because you wouldn't want to have your water going through bone char. And at the end of the day, you can buy bottled water if you want to. Some bottled waters sold in England and the whole UK, in fact, I wouldn't touch, because they have got fluoride in. But most of the waters produced in the UK are pure. Perhaps about 0.1 milligram fluoride, natural fluoride. So they're okay. I can tell you about the one I wouldn't touch, and that is an Italian-produced one called San Pellegrino, which has got 0.5 milligrams fluoride in it per litre. You can reduce your fluoride intake by avoiding Indian tea or black tea from Kenya and from India, or anything grown in a fluoride-laden soil. And if the name of the tea bush is Camellia sinensis, then it will have fluoride in it, because the leaves are fluoride bioaccumulators, and the older leaves have more fluoride. So even if you go for a top quality tea with young leaves, you're still going to get a certain amount of fluoride in it. And of course, if you're making it with fluoridated tap water, then you're basically overdosing each day of your life. And of course, that will have a nasty effect on your bones the older you get, and on your endocrine system. Try and avoid foods manufactured in a fluoridated area, because they are using fluoridated tap water to make up the ingredients. And of course, if it's the first ingredient in the list of ingredients in a particular food, then obviously the majority is going to be water, fluoridated water. So you need to avoid things made in, say, Britvic in Rugby, because they make up concentrate with fluoridated tap water. You just need to know what to look for on the ingredients. And if you can find out the source of the food, then you're fine. But unfortunately, supermarkets don't actually tell you the postcode or the town where their foods are manufactured. So you just have to be a detective. It's not an easy thing. It all depends how switched on you are to avoiding fluoride. But the most important thing is don't drink fluoridated tap water, don't have a hot bath in a fluoridated area, and don't drink tea. And that will probably reduce your overexposure. And obviously, don't use anything to do with fluoride in your mouth. No fluoridated toothpaste and no fluoridated mouthwash. And also, I can go into that in a moment if you want me to, because we can talk about the NO pathway, which is a very important pathway which is damaged by fluoride.
That is absolutely amazing advice. That's really comprehensive, and actually that's super helpful for people. And just because we're coming towards the end of our time, I really want to talk about you've mounted a legal a group challenge in the UK, class action, to challenge this water fluoridation in the UK. So we'd love to hear about that, and how people can join and support that.
Thank you very much for asking about that. Yes, we have retained a barrister, and she is working towards attracting thousands of people who want to put their name to the end of a letter before claim, which is to be sent to the government solicitors. And this letter will list all the legal objections and ethical objections to having fluoride added to drinking water. And all the laws we can find counteract the one permitting law, which is the Water Industry Act 1991, where the government has the power to order a water treatment company to add hexafluorosilicic acid to their treated water. And the water company cannot refuse. Before the instruction is given, the government has to go through a 3-month public consultation of the area to be fluoridated. And these public consultations are absolutely abysmal because there's very little publicity given. The national media, for some reason, doesn't want to know about telling people about their public consultation. And the regional papers are also constrained for whatever reason. I have no idea who's doing the constraining. I've got a slight guess that it might be something to do with government and its establishment. All right, I'll come clean. I think really the government and the establishment are definitely telling national and regional media, do not publicize this particular public consultation. So the public consultations this time round in North East, 1.6 million people are now destined to become fluoridated. And it'll take a few years for this to happen. They have to do contracts. They have to go out to tender to get the equipment to put them in place, and then to do an assessment of how the equipment is working. In the meantime, we're hoping that our letter before claim will be populated with lots and lots of names of our claimants who want to challenge the government. Now, being a claimant on the letter before claim costs nothing, apart from an admin fee to make a contract with the barrister. There's no possibility of any adverse costs because this is not a court case. This is a pre-court case, and our claimants can withdraw from the action after the letter before claim has been answered by the solicitors. If they don't want to go to court and they're concerned about losing their livelihood or their money or their house or anything like that, they don't have to. They don't have to stay with us. But we do need their names on the letter before claim. That's so important. So we're waiting for the requisite number of people to come forward, and then we can send the letter. That's the first part. Now, if we have admission by the government solicitors that it's a medicine, then I think we would win without having to go to court. the chances are, though, the government's not going to admit that fluoridated water is a medicine. But we do have 3 precedents worldwide and a British standard which admit that fluoridated water is a prophylactic, a preventative, a medicine. And if that's the case, then you can't be drinking water. And if it can't be drinking water, then there are no guidelines. So we basically then go down the pathway of saying A is proven, therefore B is proven, therefore C and D and E is proven. So first of all, we've got to get proof or admission that it is a medicine. And that's our main aim.
Brilliant. So you're looking for people who are in a fluoridated area already or who are threatened. So there's 1.6 million who are, we took part in that public consultation because this is the campaign that we ran last year to try to encourage as many people to submit as possible. And I think it was a really well responded to campaign. And I think lots and thousands of people wrote into the public consultation to say no. So you're saying that basically that was just passed anyway. The government didn't take any notice of the multiple objections to that proposal to fluoridate the Northeast, and they are now under the threat that this will now happen over the next few years. So we need those 1.6 million people to sign up to this class action, because presumably the more signatures you get, the more claimants you get on the letter before action, the stronger your case. Is that how it works?
Correct, yes. When it came to the jobs not jabs, our barrister got thousands and thousands and thousands of signatures or people from who are employed by the NHS. Well, of course, everybody in the NHS was up in arms. They didn't want to lose their jobs. They didn't want to get the jab. So they all rallied to the call. And they were all accessible via email or via their trade unions, if you like. In our case, all our people that we would like to contact are all scattered over the Northeast, and they didn't get to hear about the public consultation because it wasn't in the paper newspapers. It was in the electronic newspaper, and it appeared on the first day, and that was it. And that was the Monday before they all went on Easter holiday. So everybody was really getting ready. Who was going to have time to read an electronic paper? No, it was really very badly done and almost deliberate, in my view. Also, at the same time as they didn't get to find out, 300 organizations with vested interest in fluoridation or marginal interest were told individually by email by the Department of Health. And of course, they made up the numbers of people who submitted to the consultation who were in favour of fluoridation. So that actually basically changed the whole situation.
So basically, the vast majority of people in the Northeast are still completely oblivious as to the fact that any consultation took place, and that now that this policy has been passed, and that their water is going to change within the next few years.
And that's why we're going on to podcasts and talking to alternative media to try to get the message through to people in the Northeast that they can still take part in objecting to what's happening.
What we'll do is we'll put on the show notes all the links to the relevant websites where people can sign up and find more information out, but ideally get their names down to support this class action, because obviously, it's a tiny fee compared to a lifetime of expensive measures you're going to have to take in those regions to actually just keep your drinking water safe for your consumption. So I think it's well worth the small investment in supporting this case, and the more people we get, the cheaper the cost would be. So we're coming to the end of our time. Is there anything important that we haven't discussed?
Yes, thank you very much for asking. In America, because of the court case ruling that fluoride poses an unreasonable risk to the IQ of children, the Surgeon General of Florida, Joseph Ladapo, came out on record in December in a public statement to say that he was going to stop fluoridation of Florida. In May, a bill was passed and signed in to law by Governor DeSantis. And that means that from the 1st of July, nobody in Florida has been fluoridated. That's 23 million people. It's such a wonderful, wonderful thing to have happened. At the same time, in Utah, they've also passed into law an act which prevents fluoridation, and that's another 3.5 million people who have now become released from fluoridation. 60 more communities in the United States, 2 in Canada, 2 in Australia, and 1 hopeful in New Zealand have also been released from fluoridation. So in total, about 28 million people are no longer fluoridated. And that's basically a huge amount of people. And that's just 2 states. Now, the political will in America is to stop fluoridation. So the Secretary of State for Health is pushing pretty hard behind the scenes for other states to legislate against fluoridation. And if that's happening, why is it not happening in the UK? It's because I believe it's an embedded policy of the establishment to fluoridate us. Well, we're going to have to get rid of the embedded policy by giving a little push in that direction.
Well, let's just hope that what's happening in America will sound the death knell for fluoridation of water all around the world. So where can people find your material and support your campaigns? So what websites or social media?
So my website is ukfffa.org.uk. And we've got the button there to link to the barrister's website, as it were. And the barrister's website is kingfisherjustice.co.uk. You can go straight there if you want to and just register. It's a small admin fee, but there's no other financial costs at all. And you can get the information on the action on my website, or you can actually look at the Kingfisher website as well to find more information.
Fantastic. We'll put all of those links up in the show notes. So thank you so much, Joy, for giving us your time and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. And I'm sure our viewers and listeners have learned a huge amount today and will be empowered by this information. And I think it's one of these many areas where we, and particularly our children, face serious threats to our health and well-being from crazy public health policies, which are exposing us to completely unnecessary toxins such as fluoride. So I just wish you so much, good fortune with your legal action, and please do keep us updated as the case proceeds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you.